Welcome back, friends. So, today's conversation is taken from the third chapter titled The Soul and God. I'll read a few paragraphs to start with, and then we will discuss more about it. God is the ocean of spirit, and human beings are like waves that rise and fall on the ocean's surface. It's interesting. I remember in my early years as a teacher, I was at the moral science period in class, and a little child walked up to me and asked me very innocently, what is the soul? I read about it in books. Can you tell me what it means? And I was caught aback by the question. I was taken aback by the question. And I remember I mumbled something. I don't exactly remember what I mentioned to the child. But it left me thinking as well as to what is the soul. Sometimes we take all of these words for granted, that we know what it means. And I can say that until I came to this part, the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, I really did not have a clear understanding of the soul, of what is God. Though I was brought up in a very spiritual family with daily classes at churches and Sunday schools. But the clarity with which Paramahansa Yogananda explains spirituality and brings it into practice and helps us bring it into practice in our daily life is a wonderful teaching to be shared with everyone. And here he is giving us a very clear understanding of the relationship between the soul and God. And a beautiful analogy he shares is that of the ocean and the wave. That God is the ocean of spirit and the soul is an individualized spark of the same consciousness, a wave on that ocean. We can imagine standing before the ocean. Excuse me. We can imagine standing before the ocean. Now, if I take a glass and scoop up some water from the ocean, the water is the same, but however, the power of the ocean is not in that little cup of water, unless we put that cup of water back into the ocean again. And similarly, we are individualized scoops of consciousness from the great ocean of spirit. As long as we wish to remain separate from that consciousness of spirit, we remain little in our power to accomplish things. But the moment we unite our will with the divine consciousness, the moment we unite our aspirations with that higher will for our higher goodness, we will find that there is a universe of power behind our every thought and action. In the next paragraph, Master goes on to say, from a rowboat, the waves appear endlessly varied. Some are large and threatening, others small and easy to row upon. From an airplane, however, all that is seen is the ocean itself, not the waves on its surface. I remember Swami Kriyanandaji, he made a beautiful statement once when giving an advice on how to overcome suffering. He said, when we are going through difficult times or a very difficult challenge, imagine yourself as a point in the galaxy. And Master's beautiful visualization here is something that we can take into our consciousness for our everyday life. That when we are in the thick of things, we are very attached and very involved in all that is happening around us to the degree that we forget the bigger picture. But the moment we lift ourselves out of the plane, for example, we are climbing a mountain. From the top of the mountain, the valley, everything becomes very clear. The valleys, the bylanes, everything is very clear. But when we are caught in a bylane or an alley, it's hard for us sometimes to know what else is around us. In the same way, in life, when we have troubles, when we need clarity, what we need to do is, if we can remove ourselves from the thick of the moment, if we can get into the spine, if we can meditate and withdraw our consciousness a little bit and take it into the higher realms of super consciousness, we begin to see the solutions. We begin to see the answers to every problem. Paramahansa Yogananda goes on to say, we are all a part of God, even as waves are a part of the ocean. Can anyone ever escape his Creator? Isn't it such a beautiful thought that we can never be away from the Creator? We are a part of it, and the great consolation that comes with this thought is that His power is behind us all the time. But what we need to do is to ask for that power, is to seek that oneness which will bring us that infinite power. Remember that we, even though we are as individuals, we have been given the power by God to create galaxies. We have been given everything that God Himself has. As it is said in the Bible, He said, "Don't you remember that we are gods?" But we have forgotten our inheritance as children of God. And yoga science gives us very clear directions and steps on how to remember our true nature and reclaim that lost inheritance. In a storm, the surface of the ocean knows no peace. Similarly, as long as the storm of delusion rages in the human mind, a person knows no peace, but only tension and anxiety. What is the cause of all our tension and anxiety? Master goes on to say that the ego, he goes on to say that when a person can relax the hold of ego over circumstances, he is able to attract or is able to discover God's presence within him, if to that degree. Now the ego, Yoganandaji described as the soul identified with the body. Sometimes we tend to dismiss the ego as an enemy, but the ego, we will realize, is an instrument of God. It's an instrument of spirit. It is when we bring our selfish motivations and selfish desires, and the ego is corrupted with those selfish desires, that is when it becomes unhealthy. And that is when it limits our progress, it limits our understanding of higher realities. So how do we overcome the tendency to limit our consciousness to this form, to a separate individuality? That is where Yoganandaji tells us very clearly in this chapter that if to the man of non-attachment, he says, to the man of non-attachment, all is Brahma. And there he gives us a key to bring to reclaiming our oneness with God. Now, what is non-attachment? Non-attachment is not about being indifferent, it's not about being cold, it's not about not loving or caring. Non-attachment, on the other hand, expands our consciousness with greater sensitivity to all of the aspects, all of the human emotions that we already experience in little sparks. But what not does is that we really begin to enjoy those aspects of God, love, joy, power, wisdom. We begin to enjoy those aspects not in a fleeting or temporary manner, but in its eternal verities. So we can, through the power of yoga science, through the practice of techniques, through meditation, the way we started with chanting and meditation in this session, through chanting, through meditation, through keeping our attention on God, through keeping our attention on consciousness of higher realities like forgiveness, compassion, kindness, love, we raise our consciousness to a higher plane. And in raising our consciousness through the performance of good actions, through the performance of right actions, we move towards non-attachment step by step. But let's remember, friends, that true happiness comes from sharing every thought, every action, the fruit of every thought and action, to share it with others. Master said, true happiness comes with including the happiness of others in your home. With that, I will now hand it over to Shamini to cover the next few conversations.
Thank you, Blezy. That was really nice. And good evening, friends, again. I'm Shamini, for those of you who haven't met yet. And it's a joy to share with you today on this book. This is such a great book, as Blezy was mentioning. It's so wonderful how Swami Kriyananda has captured these snippets of conversations that he had with, or he heard from Paramahansa Yogananda. And actually, as someone who is actually very visual, I'm a very visual person, as most people tend to be these days. There's a lot of imagery, a lot of metaphors that Yoganandaji actually uses in his teachings, but especially in this chapter. And that's what actually really fascinated me about this. And as Blezy was sharing about the ocean becoming the little wave, becoming the big ocean, I'm going to share with you two more that he shared with us in this chapter. The first one is, God is the ocean of, this one. God is the electricity and human beings are the light bulbs. So I'll say that again. God is the electricity and human beings are the light bulbs. So how simple, how easily he's put it for us. Again, as Blezy was saying, the chapter is the soul and God, which two concepts which can be a little bit huge, infinite, vast for us to understand even, and maybe intellectually we've heard about these things as she was talking about, the little kids coming and asking us, maybe many of us have had that. How do you explain these concepts to them, which are very huge, and unless you actually experience them, how do you make it a part of your life? And that's the beauty in Yogananda's teaching. So God is the electricity, human beings are the light bulbs. When we look around, we see right in this room, we can see 3 different kinds of light bulbs just around us. And all of us have seen light bulbs every single day of our lives. We've been worked with it. Maybe some of us have bought them at stores. We know how different they are. They come in different sizes, different shapes, they give different colors. You put them in different lampshades, they give a whole different look. And so similarly, human beings, we are so different in our outward appearance. We wear different clothes, we have different hairstyles. There's so many different things on an outer level. But what he's trying to explain to us here is never forget the true source of electricity, of power that is feeding that light bulb, the true source of power that is feeding a human being. Because what happens when we cut off that source of electricity from the light bulb? It basically just ceases to give its color, give its same brightness. That's what he says. It becomes just a nice thing that just might be hanging there. And it's essentially useless to us, right? And so remembering really that the source that feeds each light bulb, that electricity which feeds each light bulb, is the same for us as human beings. We may all look so different on the outside, but really we're just fed by the same true source, the same power, the power of God. And so interestingly, a lot of our dear friends who've been on this path for a long time, who got to spend much time with Swami Kriyananda, they often tell us the stories of how, he was able to just love everyone. Swamiji just loved every single person the same. And a few of us who maybe got to see him towards even the end of his life, and even if we had a brief encounter with him, we just felt as if we were meeting a dear friend who's just known us for so long, who just loves us deeply, cares for our higher needs. And how is that possible, that he was just able to give that same amount of love to a friend he's known his whole life, or someone he's just met, or even someone just passing on the street? Many times they would too feel that same amount of love. And they explained to us it was because he was always looking at the presence of God in them. He was always tuning into that, and he had understood that that presence of God was what was the presence of God in him. That was his true source of power. And so he was just relating to them from that point. And how beautiful, isn't it, to think of it in that sense? So how expansive a consciousness. Usually all of us, we become so limited from the moment we are, that's just the nature of our society. We're like, oh, that's such a nice clothing piece, or oh, you got a haircut, or we just relate to each other on such a superficial level. And then once you come on the spiritual path, once you start meditating, even a little bit, you know that there's something much more to yourself. You know that there's something much more to other people around you. And what a lovely way to start to expand yourself, rather than making this whole, concept in our mind of, no, I am separate from her and I have to be better and I have to be faster and I have to get a bigger car. And, we just box ourselves into these realities that creates blocks within ourselves, that closes our hearts off. And so essentially coming back to this thing, God is the electricity, human beings are light bulbs. If we always try to remember the true source of our reality, the true source behind everything around us, then everything begins to become so much more rich, so much more full. Just as Swami Kriyananda, not only with people, he knew everything around him was fed by that same true source of power. And what an enriching way to live. So that was one. And then the other one that he shares, which is again very beautiful, is, here it is. Human beings are like the individual jets of flame on a gas stove. God is the reservoir of gas underneath. So we're lucky in India, we still have gas stoves. A lot of people in the West are already using electric cooking things. But essentially we know that when you open, we have the opportunity to make it on sim or to increase the flame and increase the amount of gas flowing. So he's trying to say that the more we open up that jet, the more we allow that gas to flow, the stronger the power, the stronger the temperature. And similarly with God, the more we allow the presence of God to fill us, the more we are able to live lives that are inspiring, that are filled with life, which are filled with light and power. So what does this mean for us again? How do we relate this to, again, what we were sharing? Blezy shared with you many things, like we practiced the chant, we did a very short meditation in the beginning, and we know how much that helps us, right? Even just a little bit of that, it centers us, it helps us connect to something that's bigger than us. What is that something? We're trying to connect with that presence of God within us. We're trying to increase that. And so, we had a couple of weeks ago, we did a workshop here on the chakras. And I don't know, I thought about this when I was reading this passage and I wanted to share. I thought it might be interesting for you or helpful. Where we have the 7 chakras, the centers, the energy vortices that are in our bodies. And we know from our teachings as well, they are essentially centers where past karmic patterns get locked, or where energy basically gets blocked. Certain attitudes we have may get lodged there, certain bad habit patterns, etc. etc. And as we understand that when you get energy moving in the spine, then you begin in meditation, you begin to go deeper in meditation, you begin to have more energy for your spiritual life. And the more energy that's flowing through the spine, through those centers, through those chakras, the higher our consciousness, the higher we expand our consciousness, our awareness, we begin to live in a higher consciousness. So, similarly, there's this beautiful analogy again of the water that's flowing through a river. And if it's just a little tiny stream, and if there are a few twigs and a few leaves and dead things that come on the way, what happens to the water? It just barely makes it through, and maybe what comes out on the other end is just a tiny little trickle, right? But what happens if you increase the amount of water flowing through, the flow of water? All of a sudden, it's going to take with it those twigs, those leaves, all those blockages. It's just going to take that with it and then kind of move along. So similarly, with this as well, I just remembered it in regard to the gas stove. The more we're able to open up that clogged jet of gas stove, all of a sudden the flame that comes through is stronger, is more powerful. It takes along with it all those blocks, all those things which otherwise might just be a little trickle of energy. And most people when they come here to the center, they often tell us, oh, our lives are so busy and I have so much stress, I don't have time and I'm just stuck in a routine. Sounds familiar, right? The moment we get into a structured routine, our lives become kind of monotonous, and we often have to find a way to keep the inspiration high, even in these spiritual teachings, with Blezy was sharing, with meditation, with chanting, with anything really, with prayer. How do we make it fresh in our lives? How do we keep it ever fresh, ever inspiring? And this is one way to do so. This is actually the only way to do so. It's anytime we get, of course, just close your eyes, sit for a few moments, try to increase, connect with that presence of God within you. Try to let it become bigger than your limited identification with my, me, myself. And all of a sudden, the inspiration does come, the energy does come to help us, whether in, of course, meditation and chanting, but in every little thing. Our relationships with people, the way we approach our work, the way we do any little thing, from washing the dishes, can become really inspiring, can become really fun, because you can do it in an ever fresh way. So to end, I'll just share with you from reading from what he shares. He says that a clogged opening may not even ignite at all, even though a little of the gas still manages to leak through it. Many people, similarly, are so lacking in inner vitality. So what he says is, the more we close ourselves off from God through pride and through indifference to the needs of others, the weaker the flame of power and inspiration in our lives. So basically, any moment we get, let's try this week to just remember practicing the presence of God. Whenever you feel a little closed off, a little cut off from the source, from the bigger ocean, you're just becoming a bigger wave in yourself, you're getting caught in realities. Just try to just take a moment, close your eyes, watch your breath, and just pray to God. Ask for His help, that we may tune into Him, we may feel His presence with us, always guiding us, and He does come.